Always do
Perfect.
that for any installation, whether it is to do with PowerPoint presentations or any form of IT related activity, always. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. What I'm going to try to do today is to take you through some of the things that have been happening in the market where we see, and it may be obvious to many of you, but not so for everybody, right? So where we see the market moving. I'll also take you through a new announcement that we made barely a week ago on a new product that is actually very different in its approach to the market. But before that, what I will do is I'll take you through my perspective of how I see the market moving, what I see customers coming back and asking, and how you can help structure conversations that are a lot more forward facing and flexible for your customers, right? So these are the key words that you hear everywhere, right? The big picture, right? IoT, analytics, edge, cloud, and I mean there are many words around these technologies. But what I'm going to do is try and give you that picture of what this story is and how I look at the world whenever I engage with or speak with customers, CIOs, or so we have all of these edge devices coming up, and everyone's coming up with different kinds of solutions, different kind of devices, not just mobile phones, but in terms of small devices sitting in multiple hundreds of sensors sitting inside cars, for automatic driving, sensors and cameras sitting in the cars, so smarter cities. You know the trend; it's everywhere. And it's one of the other reasons why we're all facing supply shortages, because this explosion of chip requirements across these devices. Now, one of the things that not just telecom vendors, but almost every user of such a solution has seen is when all of these devices send data, it can really overload the network. So the normal way to fix this is the concept of an edge computing device or an edge server. The edge server does computation at the edge, in the retail office, inside the car, wherever it might be, gets that data and then sends it across the telco network, i.e. 5G, for example, into the data center. The data center receives this information, and it's actually the application and the web servers that work on it. And I call those application and web servers to be sitting on dynamic workloads, right? They change very often. As an example, when you have your own mobile application, or if you look at your own phone, right, you will see updates happening every 2 weeks. That is not unique. That is very, very normal. The applications and the web servers that are sitting and receiving the data need to be updated very often. And I call those workloads dynamic in nature because of the constant change that they have to undergo. But having said that, these systems, the app and the web layer, in other words, the dynamic layer, sends data into the databases, whether it be structured or unstructured. And those databases are critical to the business. Those I would call as mission critical, right? So mission critical systems, because anything happens to those databases, whether it be scale out structured or scale up structured or scale out unstructured, doesn't matter. That's where the company's true IP is sitting. That's knowledge. That knowledge, of course, needs to be harnessed. And that's where you hear about HPC and AI. That's where the analytics layer sits. It started off with the big data storyline 10 years ago. Now it's all about machine learning and high performance computing and all of that. But it's all about taking the data from the company's setup, from outside, from the internet, and trying to make sense of it, and then providing those business insights. Now, all of this data that is sitting there, that comes in from the app, from the web, goes to mission critical, and then is sitting in the analytical layer, all of that data needs to be protected. So people do data management and data protection at the data center itself, and or do it a disaster recovery site, right? So you have 3-site DR architectures, near DC, data center, and then far DR. That morphed because now many customers are deciding to go to cloud. And if you hear a cloud vendor make this pitch, if you hear Microsoft or Google or Amazon, they'll always say, send the data from the edge directly to the server or to the cloud. Then from the cloud, send it to the data center, or don't send it at all, leave it with us. Every vendor will have their own pitch. Our strategy, Lenovo's strategy at a company level is not to tell the customer or the partner, this is what you should do, but it is, what do you want to do? And I will bring best of breed solutions to make that work. It doesn't matter which OEM it is from. We'll make it work. If you want a cloud first strategy, we'll go cloud first. If you want a data center first, we'll go data center first. If you want both, yeah, sure, we'll do both. And we'll talk about how we do that. So let's talk about the data center, right? And I'll purposely change the colors to change your perspective as well. Within the data center, you'll have dynamic workloads. These dynamic applications change very often. There'll be analytics. There'll be some form of heavy databases. There'll be very large amount of capacity of storage, like long-term disaster recovery, you name it, right? And then you'll have come like in medical hospitals or in law firms, you'll have data retention for 5 or 10 years, or even the lifetime of the patient. So that's long-term archive. You'll have a disaster recovery side, and eventually you'll have some form of public cloud. These would be the basic blueprints that all of your infrastructure decision makers need to cater and plan for. Within this data center blueprint, I'm going to show you how Lenovo fits. We work very well with the hyperconverged vendors of today, whether it be Nutanix, VMware, or Microsoft. All of them could be running applications around VDI with Red Hat or Citrix, and they would also be sending their data up to their public cloud. Now, of course, VMware will want to work with Amazon. Azure, Microsoft will want to work with Microsoft. Nutanix will work with Google and then work on, everyone has their own relationships. We have relationships with all of these vendors, and therefore we're open. So you tell us what your customers want. We create a solution which is multi-cloud. Having said that, none of these three vendors will say you should do bare metal as well, because that's not what they sell. We offer bare metal, whether it be blades, rack servers, high-end, 4-socket, 8-socket, you name it. So we have that option available. And then from a big data perspective or an HPC portfolio, we've got liquid cooled systems that are able to perfectly align themselves to artificial intelligence, workload, and analytics. Let's come down to mission critical. Mission critical systems, specifically structured databases, tend to be scale up in nature. And for that, we have our high-end systems, which is our 4 and 8 socket servers connecting via NVMe protocol through 32 gig, 64 gig fabrics to an all-flash array, which is an NVMe storage with BM7100. Yeah, I know that's a lot of product, but the message I'm giving you is databases being managed high-end, very high performance on scale up with less than 0.1 millisecond latency. In other words, we're looking at the nanosecond latency levels, right? That data also needs to be protected. So we replicate that data to a larger capacity storage. Now, we don't want to just save data from the database, or in other words, mission critical. We also want to save data from the application layer, which is where the hyperconverged layer was sitting. So we'll back up that data from the hyperconverged layer to the same system as well. We can archive that data to tape. Now, if you listen to any storage vendor, they will say, oh, tape is dead. No, it's not. There's a big market out there for it. And it offers 5 times cheaper dollar per gigabyte than Amazon, Google, Microsoft, or any other cloud vendor. It's just $200 for a tape that gives 12 terabytes uncompressed, 36 TB compressed. Nothing can compete with that price. Plus, it's secure because it's offline. Done. So that could be a long-term alternative. Could be, right? We could replicate the data from the storage system to a DR site, or you could have the data being replicated via the hyperconverged site as well, the hyperconverged layer as well, or do both. And then, of course, have the ability to move data across multi-cloud. Now, one of the key things that we bring to the table is on our storage systems, we use a software called ONTAP, which resides in Google, Microsoft, Azure, Alibaba, IBM Smart, IBM Cloud, as well as in our storage systems. So the file system is sitting in all of these public cloud layers, so I can move the data from any cloud to any cloud. In other words, data from hyperconverged, or data from bare metal, or data from any of the disaster recovery sites could be sitting in Google. That with a right click, I could move to Amazon and I could move that to Azure, or I could move it back. We give customers that freedom. And we are only the hardware people. We are working with best of breed manufacturers and software vendors all across the world to be able to adapt our solutions to a customer's IT strategy, to your existing problems, rather than trying to give you something brand new that is contradictory towards your existing setup, right? From a store, and I'm the storage guy, so I need to talk about storage to you. But before I go talk about the product side, I want to just leave our philosophy a little bit to you. We want to create solutions that provide data security everywhere, that provide data security for everyone, which means everyone in the company with different levels, and offer resilience and protection all at the same time. So easy access for all users, whether they're accessing from the cloud, from the home, or from the office. Easy data management across all types, whether it's file, block, or object. Data across all platforms doesn't have to be sitting on a hyperconverged layer. It could be sitting on bare metal, could be sitting on storage, it could be sitting on an NACI layer. We work with vendors to be able to create solutions that give you that flexibility of transparency of data. Ensuring that we prevent errors by doing application level integration. So create processes that do automation of this data management rather than requiring human intervention. So human beings set the policy and the system does the job. Controlling performance for various needs, right? You might have a database requiring a higher amount of performance. You might have somebody in a law firm, on the other hand, wanting very high performance in the file storage access. It depends. So being able to adapt our systems to give measurable and prioritizable performance. Through multi-cloud for data, as I mentioned earlier, being able to move your data from Alibaba to Google to Microsoft to Azure to IBM back to your disaster recovery side based on your needs, right? There could be a CapEx need, there could be a budget constraint, it could be a spike in your loads, whatever it might be, giving you the flexibility to handle unpredictability, right? And not hurting your budget. We have solutions that are very low in dollar per terabyte, very low in dollar per IOP. And we'll talk a little bit about pricing towards the end as well. And we scale from gigabytes to petabytes, right? The systems and storage that we have can go up to 132 petabytes in one single cluster. Why you would say, why would you need that amount of data? Yeah, when you're consolidating different types of data, providing different levels of performance, this will come up. So that's the philosophy that we follow on the storage side. And we've been doing that for 3 years now. I would call Lenovo the industry's best kept secret. And the next few slides will explain to you the performance of the market that we've seen. We've grown 20 times faster than the market on all flash. We are the fastest all flash growing vendor. We are the first to market with end-to-end NVMe. And we have been number 2 worldwide entry storage, which means that it's also world's best skill. We're trying to get this thing to change so that it's not a secret anymore, but it's public information. All of this data on the slide is from IDC. But it's not just IDC that's showing us this data. Gartner has also noted that we have been growing. Now, this year's Gartner report is not out yet, probably come up at the end of the year. But for the last 2 years, we've been growing as a challenger from the bottom of the stack of the challenger to crossing Fujitsu and Inspur. And we are going to be beating and getting into the leaders quadrant as well. So it's 2020. We still have performance numbers to show. And I will show you something that's really cool. We went from number 7 in entry storage to number 2 in entry storage in 2 years. This is over and above the fact that we are part of a $50 billion company that last year grew to 60 billion. Lenovo as a company grew 20 billion, and within that same time frame, we've become number 2 in storage. So it's not just the storage portfolio that's doing well. Overall, as a company, we're growing. And all of this is public information. If you see on the next slide, it's now 3 consecutive quarters. Lenovo has been number 2 ahead of HP. Dell still leads the pack. But yeah, Lenovo is now so the chart shows only up to 2020 Q4, but as of last quarter as well, calendar January to March, we were number 2 again. What that shows is a small player starting from nowhere in 3 years has been able to overtake the rest of the market. Yes, this is an entry. It's a much bigger market to play. But you know what? Market share is one thing. What is important is what you can sell. And we are growing in those products, in those areas where you can sell. Now, this performance is before the announcement of these 2 products. We recently announced a cut down version, and I'm using a very negative word, but I have a reason for it. A cut down version of our high-end storage system features without losing any of the power of it. And explain what that means. On our all-flash systems, we had the DE series, which was based on centricity, a simple, low cost, goes up to a million IOPS, less than 50K storage system, but it didn't really have any scaling capabilities as such. Maximum we could do was 2.2 petabytes. That's it, 2.3 petabytes. We also had the higher end DM series, which is based on the ONTAP software. Remember the software I was mentioning to you about public cloud? That one. And that was running with a premium version of that. And it was turning out to be quite expensive because, well, traditionally customers who would buy that would be the enterprise customers going into that. And what we are seeing is that there is a large market to go and address in the entry space because that's where the growth is coming. That growth, to address that growth, we introduced 3 new products. The SAN only versions, SAN Premium and SAN Fundamental, and Unified Fundamentals. All of these systems are almost 15% better on dollar per gigabyte. So if you look at the chart, we are looking at almost a 35% delta between what we were selling earlier and what we're selling now. I'll tell you what that means. It means you can buy from Lenovo for $16,000 a DM all-flash storage that supports replication, application-aware snapshots, native cloud integration, data efficiency of 3:1 at a minimum, async replication, encryption, thin provisioning snapshots, RAID and data protection for less than $16,000. 12 SSDs, 960 GB. Effective capacity, 22 terabytes for less than 16K. This information is for the partners, not for the media people on call, please. So what this allows us to do, and this is a simple table of comparison of fundamentals versus premium, and we'll be sending this slide deck to VST so they can be shared later. The intent being that you can start at a low point with your customer and then automatically upgrade up the stack. You're not locked in. You can move up the stack. And it comes with very differentiated capabilities, 6 nines of uptime, performance of up to, I think the NVMe, we have an NVMe, so 5100 is an NVMe storage, 5000F is a SAS storage. The NVMe storage goes up to 175,000 IOPS with less than 0.1 millisecond latency. It has cloud integration, data protection, offer security. You're able to do block protocol and upgrade forward. You can do synchronous replication as well, and also monitor the storage system as to how it's working on. That's the product story. Next is just 2 slides left in my presentation, right? The next story is going to be around the growth path with Lenovo, with our DM series. And the reason I'm taking you through this is because I want you to see how a conversation transpires with the customer and how over a year, right? And the kind of approach that we will be taking in the market. So let's take a real life example, right? So this, by the way, this story is something I've personally done with a customer, not in Philippines, but definitely in another country. So I went into a customer situation. They wanted an entry level price point. They didn't have the budget, but they wanted to run it for virtual machines. And they said, I want a storage system which fits my budget, which is very low, but I want 22 terabytes of capacity for my VMs. And I want 15K IOPS. We gave them 67,000 IOPS, which, by the way, the applications they realized later were very hungry and they ate it up, with 2.3 Gbps of throughput and a 1 millisecond latency, right? Because this was SaaS. And it was round about less than $20,000. Then they said, you know what, this is good. Your storage is working fine. I need more capacity. This happened during COVID's time. So they wanted to expand the capacity. We keep thinking the performance same because they were really liking the latency. They were liking the IOPS. The system was delivering to its max. They just wanted to add more VMs to it. So we added 115 terabytes of existing capacity onto that system at again a price point less than 30K. After that, they said, hey, you know what? This is great, but now that all of my users are accessing remotely, we need to expand our file services because that's where they're all storing their documents and all of that. And I'll make sure that that area is secure and complete. So we gave them a demo of the files capability. And after the demo, we said, by the way, you can do that in your existing system. It says, how? Well, we'll just expand, just upgrade it. They said, no, I want a separate system. Fine. We gave them a separate system, a hybrid system, this time with 100 terabytes, usable, effective capacity, right? That's just 10 terabyte drives. And they got 3,700 IOPS, 72 Mbps, great, excellent for a file workload. Then they came and said, you know what? While we were having this conversation on the file storage, they said, we also need to make sure of business resiliency. Because things like this happen, COVID happening, and then tomorrow we have global warming, something or the other comes up. There's an earthquake in Bali and something gets stuck, or maybe Singapore get locked down. But if something gets stuck, what do we do? DR side came up. Now the disaster recovery side, we told them, look, you're already running it. You just want it as a backup. You don't really need that high amount of performance. So I'm going to give you a storage with 300 terabytes of effective large drive capacity with 2 terabytes of NVMe cache. I'm going to give it at 5,300 IOPS at a very low cost. That also was less than 30K. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to synchronize the data, basic async replication. Remember, not a very large customer, does not have that much money approved because most of the money is being used for employee welfare, COVID times, right? So async replication, plain and simple, we got that piece done. And the data from the virtual machines as well as the file data was being captured and stored onto the file storage system, or onto the DR side. Things were going fine. Exactly 3 months later, on my birthday, I actually got a call. They wanted to expand the data and they wanted to do backup of it because their Commvault licenses were expiring. They wanted to use Veeam. So we gave them data protection with Veeam. They bought the licenses and they expanded the existing storage itself. They didn't have to buy a new storage. So at this point in time, they have one SAN storage, one NAS storage right here, which also is storing as backup, as well as one in DR. So 3 storage systems, 3 separate silos of data. And not very, it's okay, but it's still a little messy. So we said, fine, great. Next, what's your next project? Coincidentally, and it's sheer coincidence, they wanted to upgrade their database as well. And at this point in time, I took a break. I said, you know what, let's just talk through what else you need to do because we are going in too many small steps. Let's take into consideration your entire workload. By the way, the server orders were happening along with this as well. And let's talk about the infrastructure and see what we can do to help. So within that piece, it turns out their Oracle database needed a little bit more of a performance boost. We gave them an NVMe type of storage, 30 terabytes of effective capacity, 150,000 IOPS, and a very high throughput as well, and less than 0.2 millisecond latency. Along with that, they also want to do sync replication because they wanted to maintain the RPO RTO 0. So what we did was we offered upgrades, software upgrades. In other words, features we just switched on all of those existing 3 systems. And we added one of those systems in here. What we also did was in the DC side, we put all of them into a single cluster. We just connected all the storages to function as a single storage system. And yet giving very high performance for the database, giving very high performance for file storage, doing consistent application-aware backups, making sure the data is being async replicated on the file side and sync replicated on the database side. And even in the DR side, we then went and created a test and development setup for them as well, because the hyperconverged servers needed some help. And we put all of that into 2 cluster switches. And we told them, you have a cloud strategy. Let me adapt my storage to your existing cloud strategy. They were running Amazon. We said, fine, our storages will also connect to your Amazon cloud. You just have to right click and you can turn on and pay on $1 per gigabyte in the cloud. And you have a 3-year license from us. Done. And this entire project, including upgrades in multiple steps, was less than 300K with the capacities mentioned. This was a conversation that I've actually been wanting to go and tell moment I had it with this customer. I was waiting for the deployment to get finished just so that I could make this slide and actually put that out. There is a lot that Lenovo has to offer. You've got hyperconverged, high performance computing, and product level is long. But what's important for us, for me, and for my team on this call is that we understand the workload the customer is, so that if they knowingly get into this modular story rather than doing it by accident. That they start small, because a lot of times IT teams have budgets less than 20K. Beyond 20K, they have to go to purchase. We want to give that freedom back to IT teams to be able to make those decisions and not worry about budgets, because we keep and match those budgets. And when it comes to planning the whole thing out, it shows that there's a clear plan that the IT team has to implement. And for that implementation, partners such as you on the call are important for us. Lenovo does 99% of our business through partners. We can't do it. I can't go home at the end of the day with a salary if you guys are not helping us. So we need you. We need you. We need you to help have this call. We need you to understand the edge workload. One of the things I didn't consider on this was at the price point that I was talking about, 12 to 15K, you can easily put in an edge storage with enterprise capabilities to move to the cloud. And so the first slide that I showed you comes back alive over here. You're going to have your dynamic workloads running here, your mission critical workloads running on high performance database, your large capacity backup and file storage sitting over here. Your analytics could be sitting again in the high performance system, or maybe even the disaster recovery side, because data is available over here as well. And all of it clustered and centralized management, all of it encrypted, all of it compressed, and all of it restricted with very restricted and closed user access. Ransomware, we work with ProLion, with Veeam, with many other software vendors to get our system certified on it. We understand the challenges that this new world has brought. We know where customers have challenges. Where we need your help is to take this story, keep it in your mind, and when you're talking to your customers, remember this, give us a call. We want you to lead the deal so that we can support you from the back. I have another 30 slides. but all of that is in the backup. So thank you for your time.